And I want to welcome you all here to my Soul Aligned Success series. This is our second training call. I'm doing these every 2 weeks. So if you're a follower of mine on social media or you are on my mailing list, then you're going to hear all about these trainings every 2 weeks. This is an opportunity for me to come and just channel and transmit through some of the most potent messages and guidance that I'm really been tuning into and receiving that needs to be spoken to at this time. And so if you are running a business, you are a conscious entrepreneur, you're a conscious business owner, a spiritual business owner, or a creative professional, and you know deep in your heart and soul that you are here to usher in new consciousness. You are here to bring more light to the planet. You are here because you have a divine purpose and plan to share your message, to share the depths of your being, the wisdom that you've come into this physical body with. Then you're in the right place because you're my people, right? You're my people. So I just want to welcome, we have a couple of people here in Instagram. We've got people here on Zoom, and I'm streaming live to Facebook. So just before I dive into today's training, just so you know, the advantage of coming to Zoom for these particular trainings every 2 weeks is that you get to ask questions live. So unfortunately, for those of you who are streaming on Facebook or Instagram, I'm not going to be checking questions there. So this is your invitation. If you want in and you want to engage and ask questions and participate with me and have me really, respond back to you, I want to invite you to reach out to me, or you can go to the link in my bio on Instagram and you can join my mailing list from there, or just DM me and be like, hey, I want in on these trainings. How do I do that? And I'll send you the appropriate link and we can get you on the next one. So we're talking about a topic that I think so many business owners, whether you're a newer business owner, whether you are an established business owner, and honestly, just if you're human, I think that this is a topic that so many people have struggled with. And I've been doing this work for 14 and a half years. I do the deep inner and energetic work with, established entrepreneurs and business owners. And when I do this deep inner work, this particular topic today, which I'm going to announce in just a moment, comes up over and over again. And most of the time when people come to me and they're like, I want to get these kinds of results in my life, in my business, in my finances, these are, this is one of the topics that comes up most often and can be a pretty deep block for a lot of people. And when they are on the other side of this block, that's when I start to see through the work that I'm doing with them, they really come out on the other side experiencing so much more ease and opportunities and money. But most importantly, and I think that this is heavily undervalued in our society, they feel more joy and spaciousness and fulfillment in what they're doing and what they're creating. And it doesn't feel like work. How many of us, in jobs, careers, or even in our businesses feel like we're working and we're working hard? So today's topic is all about going from force to flow. And if you caught my my posts, this week, and you were on my newsletter list, I talked a little bit about my story around this because I grew up, and I'm imagining if you relate to this, you can type 1 in the chat if you're over Zoom. And you can also type in here too, if you're on Instagram or Facebook. When you were younger and growing up, if you heard from your parents or your guardians, you've got to work hard in order to succeed in life. You have to put effort in order to get the results you want. Now, the caveat here, guys, is I'm not going to sit here and say that you're not going to put any effort or work or action towards the things you want in your life. Like, I'm definitely not the fluffy teacher. Like, I'm very practical. I can go as woo as possible, but if you can't bring the woo down practically to earth, it's useless. Okay. It's useless. And so we have to look at this from the approach of how do we combine the spiritual laws of the universe? How do we combine energetic practices and our vibration? How do we bring these kinds of principles, which can be very esoteric and metaphysical and very abstract? How do we apply a lot of these principles into our vessel, into our businesses in a very practical, accessible way? And that is something that I think is going to be super important when we come down to this particular training today. So I grew up hearing this a lot, and just, very quickly in my background, I was a perfectionist, and I was somebody who really used her personal willpower and determination to make things happen in my life. And I will be honest with you, for most of my life, I got results from that. I did really well. I succeeded. I spent 10 years in the entertainment industry, and I started my first personal brand at 15 years old. I was stuffing envelopes to agents with headshots and resumes. I was just like not a junior, a sophomore, I think. In the US, you guys call it sophomore. I was in grade 10, for those of you who are Canadians. And I was stuffing envelopes because my drama teacher had told me, you have a lot of talent, you'd be great as an actress, here's what I recommend you do. And I spent 10 years in that business, professionally singing and acting and modeling. And I started my first business at 20 years old in event marketing and event management and doing promotional work for Fortune 500 companies. And I did a lot of work in the film industry and for major companies who were in the film industry at the time. And I managed a lot of staff and talent. So I started very early on knowing that when I put my mind to something, I could just make it happen. And for many years, that actually worked for me until it didn't. And in my teens and 20s, I hustled. Like, if anybody knows the definition of hustle, it's me. I went against the grain, according to my family, my parents, and made my life harder than it needed to be by going the entrepreneurial route for them, because I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. And I went into a career at the time where, people would always tell you, you're not going to make any money in the entertainment industry. As an artist, you're not going to make any money. And this is why I have such a strong and deep connection to supporting and working with artists and creative people, because I know what it's like to be in the industry and to be told that over and over and over again. You need to have a plan B. You need to have a plan C. And I was also told this even when I started my business. So 14 and a half years ago, when I started this current business, the coaching and healing work that I do, I was told over and over again, nobody is going to pay money to do this type of work. You're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to have to work really hard to prove to people that this is something that's valuable. And I proved people wrong in that sense, because 14 and a half years later, I'm here, and this has been my full-time profession for all these years. So I worked and I built a lot of really wonderful things in my life. And in my 30s, I paid for it. And I ended up going from lots of hard work, lots of hustling, to being completely flat on my back, unable to pretty much almost get out of bed. I was in such depletion and adrenal burnout. I had nothing left in me to give. And at the time, I had built such a robust business. I was running group programs. I was doing retreats. I was running events. I was also working with many private clients in my mentorship programs. And I didn't have the time at that point to just stop everything. And so I sat in this space of really being like, wow, all this hustle, all this hard work, it's paid off, but it also has burnt me out to the core of my being. And I'm not feeling well. And if there isn't a well enough version of me to be able to show up and do this work, I can't do it. I'm in no service if I'm working and forcing and pushing and trying to control things and hustling and burning myself out and not taking care of myself to the depths that I needed to. Now, here's the caveat. I did take care of myself. I love my self-care and spiritual practices. However, it was like a Band-Aid over a wound that just kept getting picked. Very surface level, because the self-care was just having me get through the week. It wasn't actually the deep nourishment that my system needed. And in a moment, we're going to go through some of the top 3 things that I see happening for myself. And it also has been happening for my clients around this, because there is something deeper that is motivating each and every one of us. And I can attest to this. There was deeper programming, there was deeper reasoning and motivation for me to be pushing myself this hard. And a couple of those reasons was that a lot of my worth and my value came from working hard and the results I got. That was how I believed I would succeed. I had to prove myself through my hard work, through being of value to people, in order to feel like I deserve the reward of whether it be money or booking auditions or having my body look a certain way. It was through hard work that results came. And it's of no fault to my parents or my lineage. Like, I really don't sit here and blame them for that. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh God, that was like my grandmother always saying that, or that was my father, or my sister and my brother and I always went through that with our parents. Like, they just grilled this into us nonstop. I want to invite you in this moment to not look at it through the lens of blame, but to actually look at it through a lens of forgiveness and acceptance, that that is what they knew. And that was what they were conditioned to believe was the only way to get to the next level, or to survive, or to put food on the table, or to have their success. So we are products of our lineage, right? We are conditioned from a young age to believe that success and abundance and prosperity and joy has to come from doing something. We have to earn it as human beings. So if you can relate to some of this, type yes in the comments if you heard this growing up, if you experienced this. And the reason why I'm having you do that, if it does resonate, it's A, we're in a safe space, and B, I think it's also helpful for other people who are here with you to say, yeah, I too, I've gone through that as well. I relate to this. And so we know that we're not alone. So I'm just reading a couple comments here over Zoom, and we've got absolutely so much. Yes. So there's obviously a resonance here around this piece. And we got another yes and a thumbs up. So this is something that I think is a very universal belief that many of us have been conditioned with, which brings me the segue nicely into these top 3 ways in which you can move from force into flow. So depending on where you are in your journey, I want to just remind each of us that, consciously we can be walking through life being like, gosh, I just wish things were easier. And I want things to be, a lot more ease. Like, why does stuff have to be so hard for me all the time? And I get that. But here's the scoop. If you don't know this already, like 80 to 90% of what is governing our reality is not what we're thinking consciously in our waking state. It's what's going on below the surface. We call this the subconscious mind. And so over the course of our lifetime, specifically up until the age of 7, we are like these sponges soaking up everything in our environment from our families. And if we are hearing our parents talking about how much they're struggling, or how much we have to work hard, or we're witnessing them, really hustling, going to work for long hours, or being in their businesses and not being present for us, we are picking up on a conscious and an unconscious level the energy, the thoughts, the words, the emotions that our environment, the epigenetics that we're surrounded in, we are picking that up all the time from people around us. And so when we're children, we are experiencing and soaking all of that in. And we don't have the awareness, we don't have the development in our brains to say, wait a second, I don't want to take that on, because one of our most important ways of feeling like we belong in, and that we are part of our like that root chakra energy, is like feeling like we belong and we're a part of our community, of a part of our environment, our family, is to be able to relate to what those people are saying. And we don't know anything else. We don't know any other way. So our parents or our guardians growing up are our main role models and teachers. So this may seem very obvious, but we sometimes forget when we're spinning out in these conversations internally and externally with ourselves, asking ourselves, why? Why do things have to be so hard? So over the course of our lifetime, through experiences, through what we've been programmed, as I call it, we start to create all kinds of levels and layers of different programming that gets stored in the subconscious files of our mind. And that is actually what is creating your reality more than anything. So if you grew up hearing that all the time, and now you are in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, maybe even your 60s or 70s, and you're still feeling like you are repeating this cycle of being in force, of being in hard work, or things just feeling heavy and difficult and struggling, then you need to look back at the beliefs and the values that you were conditioned to believe in from the time you were a young child. Because what ends up happening is those beliefs then become the stories you're repeating to yourself. And one of the things I always tell my clients when we're doing really deep deprogramming work on the subconscious level, because this is what I do in my programs with my clients, a part of it. We also want to not fix, let me clear, cancel, delete that. We want to also resolve the way that you are communicating to yourself, because it can be so habitual for us to be telling ourselves internally and also repeating it out loud to ourselves and to other people, reiterating the story of how hard things are. So one of the quickest ways that you can move out of force to flow, yes, there's the deprogramming and really going deeper into the subconscious mind, 100%, because remember, 80 to 90% of that is what's creating and governing your reality, and it is contributing to your destiny. It's contributing to the trajectory that you are on with your life. Okay. But something that you can really start to do and get very disciplined around is catching yourself when you are talking to yourself or you're talking to other people about how hard things are. Notice how much you're repeating that. Oh my gosh, it's been such a hard day. Oh my goodness, it's been such a hard month. I'm not saying to be a positive Pollyanna and to spiritually bypass. I'm saying, can you find another way to language this that doesn't continue to energize the kind of thought bubbles and the thought patterns and the energy that you create when you tell yourself that over and over again? It's so hard for me to make money. It's so hard for me to get a client. It's so hard for me to lose this weight. It's so hard for me to have a loving relationship with my partner. Whatever the case may be, you have to become disciplined in your approach to what you are saying. This is some of the hardest work that I find that my clients experience, because we think once we've deprogrammed something, that all of a sudden we're going to have a whole new conversation and way of relating to ourselves in the world. But the truth is, sometimes those neural pathways in our brains are so, like, the muscle is just been worked so hard and to the depth that we are still in that kind of habit of still reiterating the things that we don't want to have happen or we don't want to experience. And that comes down to disciplining yourself around the way you are communicating your reality to other people. So, real life example of what this would look like. I've had a hard day. Let's just look at that. Very simple. Many of us go through this, in our lives. We get challenged. We have, not the greatest day. A reframe around this would be, this day has maybe gone in a way that I didn't anticipate or intend for it to go. And I'm feeling in my body frustration, or I'm feeling a lot of stress and tension. So notice the language is not saying I've had a hard day. Why does my day always have to be so hard? I hate Mondays. They're such a hard day for me to get through. And instead, it's creating a whole new reframe around this of saying, yeah, today has gone in a way or a direction that I just didn't hope that it would. And I'm really feeling, when you go internal, then you get to process what you're actually feeling versus reiterating the language that is giving you more of what you don't want. So this is a really simple, yet it's going to require discipline approach to this. And this over time will actually start to change the way you are relating to things being hard, to having to force things together, to things being difficult or challenging. The more you are reiterating your struggles and your suffering, the more you're going to keep experiencing that. And then when it is appropriate and time for you, it's important to do the deeper work on your subconscious and to actually start to notice what is yours and what is not yours. Is this your mom's voice in your head saying this to you, or is it your own, or is it a mix of the two? And how do you separate those things? Well, it's from doing the deeper inner work that's going to have you start to untangle those things so you can create greater sovereignty and control over your thoughts. So I want to just give you a quick frame around this. If this is helpful, let me know by saying, yes, this is I'm resonating, I'm understanding, I'm getting it. So something that I think is going to be so helpful for you, and I learned this years ago, and I want you just to imagine, this kind of like a cascade effect. Okay. So it's like at the top, you're going to remember that your thoughts are your beliefs. So your beliefs are coming out through your language. They're coming out through your communication all the time to the world. And then underneath that, your thoughts, which are your beliefs, they start to create your feelings, which become your emotional dominant state, or your dominant emotional state. Under that starts to create your words and your actions. So if you keep saying things are hard, then you're going to start to feel that stress and that tension and more of the feelings and emotions in your body. And then you're going to start to communicate that out loud to people. And then it's going to start to become your actions, your experiences, the reality that you're living in. And then from there, that becomes your habits. So it becomes a habitual pattern. We talk about pattern. I'm in this pattern all the time. Well, the pattern is reinforced through your habits, whether it's conscious or not. And then from there, that eventually creates your destiny, your results. So when clients come to me, they're like, I know I'm ready for more. I know that I'm ready to experience the next level in my business, in my finances, with myself. I know that there's something I'm ready to step into and don't know how to get there. And this is one of the areas that I start to really dive more deeply into, because your trajectory of your destiny, this map, if you will tell me exactly where you are and why you are where you are. In order to have a new result, in order for you to experience more flow, more ease, then this map has to change. What is missing from this particular map is your energy, because energy actually comes before that, because certain thoughts vibrate at a certain frequency. So when things are really hard and feel really tough, well, you can absolutely imagine on the Hawkins scale that you are not vibrating at a frequency of love or higher. You're probably vibrating at a lower frequency, and there's no judgment on that. Our frequency changes throughout the day. But if you start to learn how to increase your vibration on a daily basis, where you learn to keep your energy more pristine and clear and optimized, then you're going to notice that it's a lot harder for those thoughts and those patterns and your words and your actions and the habits to be sustained at that frequency, because your energy does not support that. And so that is an extra thing you can add to the top of the map: energy, vibration. Like, what is my vibrational state today? And you will see that when you're in a lower vibration, or you're not taking care of yourself energetically, it's going to affect the thoughts, right? Your feelings, your words, actions, habits, and then your destiny. So lower frequency will create lower frequency results. Higher frequency, you're going to start to see it's going to shift to a higher frequency result. Now, what's always going to support this is obviously doing the deeper inner work, because the energetic work is great and we can feel like we're in a great vibration and we've done our practices, but then someone comes along, triggers us, or something happens in our business, and boom, we're out of that alignment. So this is where the deeper consciousness work has to come in order to be able to have the capacity and the ability to shift states while not bypassing what's happening or what you're feeling, like knowing how to work through that and then shift states so that you go back into a vibrational state or place with yourself that supports the life and the results you want. So can you see how everything is so intricately connected? It's not like, oh, this is just my mom and dad's fault. As an adult and as somebody who's sitting here in this space with me, if you're listening, whether it's you're live or tuning into the replay, you've got to remember, like, as an adult and on the path of spiritual and personal mastery, which I'd imagine that those of you who are here are on, like, you have to take greater responsibility now for where your life is and where you're headed, and to not be in the space of victim or blame when you experience things that you're like, God, this is something that was just handed down to me. You have the ability to clear this up now. The energies on the planet, there's enough practitioners and people like myself, we can help you with that. You don't have to stay stuck in that space unless you choose to. So this is something that you've got to just really, really just dial in around how you're thinking and your beliefs and all of that. And one thing I would say for some homework around this piece is really examining, some of the stories and some of the beliefs that you were taught and you were told growing up around work, around money, around force or hustle, around things being difficult or hard. Like, I want you to go into a place of self-examination and reflection for yourself and write down in a journal. Don't just keep it in your mind. Write it down. What did I learn about things having to be hard? Where did I hear this from? Where did this originate from? The more you can get curious and remain in a state of neutrality versus judgment, you're going to see that you're going to have so much more data and information about where this is coming from, that you have the power now to start to shift this. You don't have to be a victim to this anymore. So is this helpful, guys? Let me know. Because I'm going to go on to number 2, because this one's really important. So number 2, this is where a lot of people trip up when they're in their businesses and they are finding that things are really hard, that stuff is not coming together, that it just feels like, wow, all the things that I used to do in my business, all the strategy, all the practices, all the ways in which I would show up, I would get, tremendous results. I would get results from this. And it used to be a lot easier for me. So I see a lot of people feeling like, why is it all of a sudden so hard for me to get certain results in my business? And a couple of years ago, when I went into sabbatical during 2020, I heard from God, from Source, you're going to learn a whole methodology, a new body of work that you're going to teach people about these, what I call like death rebirth cycles. And you're going to help people to understand where their soul is in their evolution of their path and growth in any given moment. So I built this whole methodology out that I was guided to build out. And what it basically does is called the 3Gs. It helps you to understand exactly where you are, your soul is. And there's a specific reason why I'm saying soul, not because it's a buzzword. I mean, I've been working with soul for so long and for many years. So this is not a buzzword. There's a reason why I've chosen soul for this as opposed to business growth or personal growth, because it's not about what your mind and your ego wants. And it's definitely not about what you want your business to be in. Your soul, especially when you're going through a path of spiritual awakening and growth, it doesn't care. if you don't like what's happening. It doesn't care if, things aren't, you're not hitting your numbers the way you used to. If that is not appropriate for the lessons and growth that your soul needs in this moment, then it can feel and appear like things are hard. So where are most people going to when things feel hard? Well, the 3 G's look like this: gestation, generating, and growth. And where people start to feel like it's getting hard is typically in gestation. And gestation is that spiritual or shamanic death cycle. And I built out the whole piece that I teach my clients around this, because when you can identify where you are, now you're not pushing so much against the season and cycle you're in. So if you know how to honor the cycle you're in, you're going to work with the energies and be in flow versus being out of flow and pushing against the cycle you're in. Because for just being in gestation for most humans is extremely uncomfortable. It feels like nothing's moving, especially when you're out of touch with that. You're not in tune with the cycle. It can feel like things have just suddenly dried up and stopped. You're in like this holding pattern. You might feel exhausted and burnt out. You might feel like there's nothing left for you to give to people, to your business. It feels challenging. You struggle. Money might not be flowing in quite the way it used to. You might be trying all of the tactics and thinking, oh, I need to invest in more business programs and another business coach. And I need to do this program online. Oh, you know what? If I just put the podcast out, that's going to be the thing. There's a drive for more external validation to get through this versus the internal process that your soul is initiating and inviting you into. Because there's deeper healing that has to happen during gestation that cannot happen when you're generating or when you're in growth. And gestation is all about shedding identities, shedding belief systems, shedding the parts of you that are no longer serving, the stories. It could even be shedding aspects of your business. For some people, it may even be like closing up shop and saying, I'm done with this business, it's time for something new. But it feels scary and it can trigger the survival instincts within us. And it can really dysregulate our nervous systems. So in my body of work, when I'm working with my clients, most of my clients, not all, but most of my clients will enter into the work with me when they're here. They're in this gestational space. And they come in and they think, well, I need to do all this work on all these things on my business. And I'm like, no, wait a second. You got to understand where you are first. And we're going to do the inner work that you need to step into and be initiated into. And then you're going to see that it's going to be so much easier to go into generating and growth. It's not going to feel like pushing. It's not going to feel hard. Money is going to start to flow again if it isn't already. Because some people have different streams of income, but it's just more of an internal, place that they're feeling within themselves, that they're going through. They're uncomfortable within who they are or where they are right now. So when you know the cycle you're in, you know exactly what you need to be doing or not doing. And that will help you to be able to identify if you're pushing and going against the flow of life or you're going with it. Because every single person is going to go through one of these cycles, and they're in that at any point. You're either in the direction of moving to the next part of the cycle or you're in it. And so gestational periods can happen for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years for people. And the more that you're going against where you are and you're not honoring that, I find that people stay in it even longer because they're not actually listening and tuned in to what their soul, and I guess you could say even the soul of your business, is requiring for you in that. So this is a challenging place, but once you know how to work with it, it becomes so much easier as a business owner and as a human to navigate these growth cycles that we go through. And it's not that when you go to generating and growth that all of a sudden everything's easy. I think that's also the the kind of stereotype that people have. Oh, if I'm in growth all the time and my dreams are coming true and I'm making money, I've got the clients and the customers, everything's going my way, it presents a whole new opportunity of growth for you and evolution, because in generating and growth, now you're going to have to look at visibility, capacity, responsibility, in ways in which you're caring for yourself, your nervous system regulation, and how embodied you are as a leader. So you starts to bring up other things to look at that you can't quite see in gestation, because those opportunities in your reality aren't there in that moment, likely. So I don't want people to think, oh, when I'm in generating and growth, it's just going to be easy breezy all the time. It's easier from a different perspective, but there's other things that may come up if you need to work through those things that will present themselves to you. So what I'm doing with my clients is we're basically going through this whole cycle, and I'm working with them in each of these cycles in their businesses and within themselves. And eventually they know where they are and what they need to be doing during those cycles to honor it. And that brings more flow and more opportunities and more money and abundance, because they're now operating with their soul, not against it. Does that make sense? So I just want to pause for a moment. I know my intention was to do like a 20-30 minute training, but then I just have so much to like say about this stuff. So I'm just going to continue going here. So if you have any questions about what I've shared and what I'm talking about so far, if this is resonating or not, just share. I'd love to hear more. And then we'll go into the third piece and a last point before we start to wrap the training up. So this time and time again has been like knowing the 3Gs and really working through it for myself, because of course I'm always the guinea pig with God, source first. So seeing myself go through this and experience this, it just makes so much more sense, and I can identify where I am. And so I will be honest, most people right now are in gestation. The last few years have kind of shaken people up, and it's like the energies and their souls are saying, no, you are too comfortable the way things were. This is not the path you're meant to be on. Now we're going to put you into a forced gestation, and you're going to have to deal with the things that when you're busy, when you're in growth, and when you're in generating, you can't quite look at. And so a lot of people's fears are coming up: fear of loss, fear of no money, fear of the future, fear of where their business is going, fear of how they're going to, feel day to day, fear of making the wrong decisions. So there's a lot going on for people right now, especially in gestation. And I believe that over the next few years, we're going to see more and more people going into gestation and really needing a framework like this to help them move through it. So I feel grateful that I got to be one of the channels to bring this through and to create this methodology and to offer it in my body of work. So Eva's saying it makes so much sense, awareness of where you are so you can navigate the process. Exactly. Yes. And it really is the death to rebirth process and cycle. I love that. Thank you. So last point, and let me tell you, over the next several years, especially with all the onset of AI, and all this technology coming in, people who are not deeply connected to themselves or their bodies, like they're not doing this type of work on themselves regularly and consistently. I really, and this is just my opinion, you may or may not agree with this, and anything I say that you don't agree with or resonate, just throw it into the trash. I always tell my clients this too, like you are your own sovereign being and you get to decide what resonates for you and what doesn't. But in my opinion, I think people who are already very lost and confused within themselves, or do not have a strong connection to themselves and God's source, to spirit, are going to really struggle over the next, decade or so, because there's so much that's going to be coming in technology wise where we can escape and lose ourselves in literally the metaverse and the virtual realities. We can have robots basically create trainings and copy and all of this stuff where we are like literally losing ourselves and our humanity in this process. And so one of the antidotes to this, because I believe it's going to get harder for people because they're going to feel this pull towards escaping or looking outside of themselves for really feeling like they're tethered and anchored to something. Really, it's developing your intuition and your connection to your body. This is so vital, and this is so imperative moving forward, because you have to learn how to discern. You also have to learn what is true for you, what you're needing, where you are, because your intuition is always going to help you and give you the wisdom and the guidance of where you are in your path. If you don't know yourself, if you don't know how to connect with God, with source, and I'm not just talking about prayer or meditation, I'm talking about having a level of intimacy with God. If God doesn't resonate, you can use the word that works for you. With source, with your creator, with your higher self, or I am presence. If you don't have that anchor, it's going to be very easy to get lost in the world. And when you're lost, you're not making the best decisions. When you're not anchored into something within you, and even greater than just the physicality, it's so easy to live out of alignment. And when we're living out of alignment and we're not making our highest, most aligned decisions according to our divine plan and God's purpose that's been placed within our beings and our souls, then we're, again, operating against the grain. Things are going to be hard. We're going to be going against what we're really here to do, who we're really here to be, because we're confused, we're lost, we're unsure, we're uncertain. And when we are afraid, we don't make the most empowered decisions. When we're in fear, we're activating our amygdala in our brain. We're activating the reptilian part of our brain, which is about survival. What we really want to be making decisions from, and it's going to bring much more ease and flow day to day, is operating from the executive center and the frontal cortex of our brain. And when we're operating from that place, we have access to so many more solutions and ideas, higher guidance. We get to listen to our body's wisdom, and we start to act on those decisions from there. So this is why spirituality and your connection to God and your intuition and your body, like really listening to your body, because I said this in my first training, and I'm going to repeat this again and again and again. We cannot move forward and go into more ease and flow if our bodies are not on board. We can't. It's not possible. So if you're doing all of your decision making just from here all the time, especially from the ego or from the old belief systems, from the old conditioning, from what society's telling you to do, if you are operating from this space and you're disconnected from your body, which is also where your gut instinct is, where your intuition can be, you know, you're going to have a much more difficult time being in flow, being in ease, feeling that fulfillment and that joy, which I predict moving forward, people are going to be investing more in that than they're just going to be in, I want to make 50K or 100K months, because that still doesn't mean that you're going to be fulfilled. That still doesn't mean that you're going to feel successful, especially when you have all these other belief systems running. And I've worked with many successful people who have tons of money, who have lives that people would be envious of, and they're still not fulfilled, and they still are in survival, and they're still afraid. So if you think, oh, if I just get my business and I just get more money and I just work hard and I have all of that, I'm going to be okay, it's going to be easy from there on out, it's a lie that you're telling to yourself that is just never going to become true. Does money give us more choice? Absolutely. And that's part of the work, you know, really working on the consciousness around wealth and money and abundance and the practical ways to bring more streams of increase. I call it increase, not income, into your life and your livelihood. But everything else, the energy, thoughts, feelings, words, actions, habits have got to be in place and support the business and the money for you to start feeling like there's more ease. And one of the most important things for me is God, my faith, trust, and listening to my intuition. It's why I'm sitting here. I would not be sitting here if it was just all logic and all my mind telling me to do this and do that. And when I have done that, I noticed how hard my life is. So if you are in a lot of force right now and it just feels like things are just not moving forward, this is your invitation to surrender, to stop, to pause, to let go. Maybe the way that you are showing up to your business and to your life right now is actually not what is necessary for you to get to the next level or to be in that next expansive state. So trust and listen to your intuition. This is super, super important because your body and your wisdom is never going to lead you astray. It's never going to lead you down the wrong path. And so working on developing intuition in my programs, this is some of the things that I absolutely work on with my clients, because that is one of the most important navigation tools to use in your life. And it will tell you when you're going against the grain. So I have a question here. What has been helpful to you in cultivating a deeper level of intimacy with God? Any specific practices or actions to help us deepen this? Well, first, there has to be a desire. I think sometimes a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I need to develop a deeper relationship with God. I need to, develop a deeper intuition, but then they don't actually create the space for it. They don't actually carve out time for that. So this has to be first and foremost a choice, a decision, a conscious decision that you make. Do you make room for God and for spirit in your life right now? How often are you in conversation with God? How often are you in a space to listen to what God has to say to you? Now, again, when we're in survival, when we've got a lot of energetic clutter, mental clutter, we've got a lot of stuff going on internally, it's very difficult to cultivate a deeper relationship and intimacy with God, I find. And I've seen this with my clients to be true, because it's like your body's like a tuning fork. It's a satellite, or actually an antenna, excuse me. So it's like the more pristine your energy is, the more that you have less of this kind of clutter and interference, distortions, inversions happening in your field and your subtle bodies inside of your vessel, the more open you are to receiving and channeling through the information and the guidance and the messages. So yes, of course, prayer and meditation are amazing ways to connect with God, but I find people sometimes get really stuck in prayer. And remember, prayer is just a one-way conversation to God. If you're not creating a space to hear God, then you're just going to be repeating your prayer, or you're not going to have the awareness to see that your prayers are getting answered. You know how many times I've had people who've come on enrollment calls with me in the past, and they're like, I've been praying for all this help, and I'm just like, I'm in this space and I can't get through, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hello, I'm an answer to that prayer. Like exactly what you're talking about, I can help you. But when somebody is not ready to see or hear that, they'll block it out, and they'll just keep going through life not knowing that God is answering their prayers. So create the space, create and have a discipline practiced around that to be able to really allow God to communicate with you as you're communicating with God, and invite God into your business, invite God into everything you're doing. God to me is my co-partner, co-creator, CEO. He writes my checks. I say he, just it's just easier. I don't look at it as a man in the sky or anything like that, but just out of semantics, just to make it easier. God, God is my financier. God is my creative developer. God is my COO. I mean, it's God first and me before anyone else. So this is super, super vital to go from force to flow. And I know it sounds a lot easier said than done, because it does take development. All three of these things that I've talked about today do require work, and it is very practical. But once you commit to it, you're going to see that your life is going to change permanently. And you're going to walk away feeling so much more empowered, so much more grounded, so much more embodied. And you're going to have a stronger foundation in your life and with your business that moving forward, you're going to have so much more resilience and resourcefulness to deal with the challenges and stress that comes at you. So this is why the answer, to all of our life's problems is go inward, really learn how to work with this, develop this, and you're going to see that things in your life are going to shift. So any other questions before I start to wrap up here? I appreciate you guys being with me here on social media and also here in Zoom. This is just an invitation for those of you who feel called. Like, if what I'm sharing has resonated for you, I would love to get on a reinvention strategy session with you to see if or how I can support you with my work. And I want to invite you to, consider that for yourself, because the work that I do goes into the depths of this. And in April, I have a couple of spots opening up. So right at this moment, I'm only doing private work. I go in depth with my clients. We work together over a period of time. I'm not the type of teacher that just does a one and done session. So, we can do something like that, but more than anything, I want to see how I can support you with where you are and where you want to go, and create the trajectory and plan to do all this deeper work and practical work to get you the results you want. So I only work with about 8 clients at a time right now. It's because the work is in depth, and I love my clients and I love the work that I get to do with them, and to see them go through those 3 Gs in their lives in their own ways. And to do that inner work requires a lot of capacity and space holding. So if you feel called and this is the time for that, please reach out. I would love to chat with you. There's no obligation to work together, but this is an opportunity to really invest and say yes to yourself, and to be all in on this season of your life, because things are about to get crazier in the world, and we have to become more liberated in who we are and how we're showing up. So reach out, DM me, or you can respond to an email if you're seeing the replay coming into an email, and I'll send you a link and we can hop on a call. And who's this for? I really truly work with business owners and entrepreneurs and creative professionals. Those are just my people. So if you are already, involved in something, with your business, with yourself, entrepreneurship, all of that, or, you're ready to get into entrepreneurship and you want to develop this part of yourself, let's chat. Let's talk about this. And then we'll go deeper into all of this. So I hope that this was valuable today, and that it really illuminated some, new ideas and new ways to start perceiving force versus flow. If you have any other questions post this training, let me know. I'm here for you. And I'm just grateful that we got to be here all together today in this space. So thank you to those of you who've joined me live. I'm deeply grateful that you were here. And I hope that you can take what I've shared today and really apply it and implement it into your lives and businesses. And feel free to share this with anybody who you think could benefit from listening to this training today. Okay, everyone, sending you lots of love. I will be back in a couple of weeks with another new training. Until then, be well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.